After the battle against the Tathagata and the Taoist master, Emperor Yangfeng was gravely injured. Qin Mu examined Emperor Yangfeng and discovered that his body was in an extremely critical condition. Blood poured from him as though he were a torn sack spilling grain. While his qi and blood rapidly declined, his divine treasures were already collapsing, producing thunderous sounds like heaven and earth crumbling apart. Without immediate treatment, he would not survive more than 2 hours. When Emperor Yangfeng weakly asked if he could still be saved, Qin Mu carefully examined him and used the heavenly devil creation technique to seal his souls and spirits inside his body, preventing them from escaping. The technique left the emperor unable to move or speak. Qin Mu then applied dragon saliva to his wounds, noticed that blind and old Ma had disappeared, likely to lure away the pursuers, and instructed the dragon Qilin to return to Granny Sis' house. Along the journey, he fed the emperor more dragon saliva, massaged his body to remove accumulated blood, and prepared spirit pills, remembering how he had once survived a fatal depletion of vitality by creating spirit Buddha pills and blood-thriving pellets. Qin Mu realized that although the blood-thriving pellets could restore the emperor's qi and blood, they might also cause the already unstable divine treasures to explode, killing everyone nearby. He concluded that the violent energy inside the divine treasures had to be dealt with first. After considering guiding the energy away with silver needles, sealing the cultivation, or dissolving it with poison, he rejected the first and third options as too dangerous and chose to seal the emperor's cultivation instead, trusting Granny Si to perform the seal. Qin Mu sadly realized that even if the emperor survived, he would likely lose all of his cultivation and become an ordinary mortal with only a normal human lifespan remaining. After arriving at Granny Sis' house, he asked her to seal the energy within Emperor Yangfeng's divine treasures while he went to purchase medicinal herbs. Granny Si jokingly accused Qin Mu of wanting to skin the emperor and replace him, then warned him not to be bewitched by the emperor's 3,000 concubines. Qin Mu denied her teasing, reminded her not to turn the emperor into clothing, and rushed to gather herbs. Emperor Yangfeng briefly overheard their conversation before losing consciousness again, silently wondering about Granny Sis' frightening personality and why the supposedly dead Li Tianxing seemed to be present. Qin Mu traveled to Quiet City, where herbs were scarce because of recent disasters, eventually gathering enough medicinal ingredients before hurrying back before nightfall. Upon returning, he found that Granny Si had successfully sealed the energy inside the emperor's divine treasures, hiding them within his body and preventing an explosion. Although Emperor Yangfeng's physical body continued to deteriorate, his souls and spirits remained stable. Granny Si warned that once Qin Mu removed the heavenly devil creation technique, the emperor's body would no longer be able to retain his souls and spirits, causing certain death. Qin Mu confidently replied that as long as the emperor's body still retained life, he could keep his souls and spirits in the human world and eventually save him. After Granny Si left to prepare dinner, Qin Mu administered blood-thriving pellets and spirit Buddha pills, guided the medicinal power with silver needles, and continued refining additional spirit medicine. That evening, after dinner, Li Tianxing's consciousness once again possessed Granny Si. Speaking through her body, he declared that he no longer belonged to the heavenly saint cult since he had died and demanded Emperor Yangfeng so he could skin him, seize the throne, and become a female emperor. Qin Mu refused to answer. Li Tianxing, controlling Granny Si, forced his way into the room but was astonished to discover that Qin Mu had planted Emperor Yangfeng upright in the ground while continuously performing Earth Eon creation technique, spirit creation technique, ghost creation technique, and other creation arts from the great educational heavenly devil scriptures to heal the emperor. Li Tianxing repeatedly criticized Qin Mu for using devil techniques incorrectly, claiming that they were meant to harm others rather than save lives. However, as he carefully observed, he gradually became fascinated. Qin Mu had completely transformed the purpose of these techniques, using Earth Eon creation technique to gather the Earth's qi and nourish the Emperor's primordial spirit, spirit creation technique to repair hidden injuries throughout his body, and ghost creation technique to stabilize his souls and spirits. Li Tianxing eventually realized that Qin Mu had pioneered an entirely different cultivation path. Instead of stealing creation from heaven, earth, and other people as traditional devil techniques did, Qin Mu used them to cultivate and improve himself from within. Although slower, this approach created a far more stable body, soul, primordial spirit, and divine treasures while even allowing one's innate aptitude to improve over time. As a former cult master and supreme expert, Li Tianxing became completely absorbed in studying Qin Emu's revolutionary interpretation of the 7 writings of creation. So captivated was he by every transformation that he forgot his original intention of killing Emperor Yangfeng. By the time roosters crowed at dawn, Li Tianxing reluctantly departed, promising to return the following night to kill them. Granny C regained control of her body and asked whether the old devil had harmed Qin Mu. Exhausted and covered in sweat, Qin Mu explained that Li Tianxing had become so engrossed in observing his creation techniques that he had forgotten to attack. And he planned to continue distracting him with other techniques from the great educational heavenly devil scriptures the following night. By the next evening, Emperor Yangfeng's condition had improved enough for him to awaken with a clear mind. Qin Mu removed the heavenly devil creation technique to test whether the emperor's body could now contain his soul. But the body immediately collapsed into an empty shell as 2 souls and 2 spirits escaped toward Yudu. Qin Mu quickly performed soul guide to draw them back into the body. But he realized that the emperor's weakened body still lacked the strength to securely contain them. At that moment, Li Tianxing's seductive voice echoed from outside once again, announcing his return and threatening to kill the emperor if Qin Mu had no new techniques to show. Emperor Yangfeng weakly remarked that the speaker sounded like a charming demoness, prompting Qin Mu to immediately seal the emperor's 5 senses. Qin Mu then revealed the form of Saturn's sovereign, causing the gate of heaven influence to appear behind him. When Granny C entered the room, she was astonished to see that Qin Emu's Saturn Sovereign's Earth Marquee true technique differed from her own and that the mysterious gate behind him even contained a book, making her realize that he had once again developed an entirely unique version of the technique. Granny C became interested in the gate of heaven influence and the scroll. Though Qin Mu himself only understood the words, gate of heaven influence, in Yudu's language, the same phrase that had nearly gotten him killed by Dushan Devil Cain. He offered to teach Li Tianxing, who refused out of pride, claiming to know every technique of the great educational heavenly devil scriptures. Qin Mu calmly replied that Li Tianxing did not know the genuine Saturn Sovereign's Earth Marquee true technique. Qin Mu activated the 9 Heavens Eye awakening skill, then opened a sinister third eye originating from Yudu. Through it, he examined Emperor Yangfeng's body and discovered that the emperor's collapsing divine treasures had severely damaged his primordial spirit, souls, and spirits. Even if his body could be healed, his unstable soul would not remain inside it. After dismissing the technique, Qin Mu proposed entering the emperor's body using the phantom illusion technique and heavenly mustard seed technique. Though Li Tianxing acted as if he already knew the methods, he followed Qin Mu as they shrank into shadows and entered Emperor Yangfeng through his forehead. Inside the spirit embryo divine treasure, they found complete devastation. A crack exposed the emperor's skull. Blood poured inside, and Dao Master's sword will continuously destroyed the divine treasure. Li Tianxing used his multiple-sided spatial sealing technique to capture the sword will after Qin Mu persuaded him to help. Qin Mu quickly understood the technique, though his cultivation was too weak to reproduce it at the same level. They proceeded to the 5 elements divine treasure, where 5 giant Buddhas occupied the shattered heavens. Li Tianxing destroyed them with the Red Lotus Devil Heart mantra, but Qin Mu immediately demonstrated an even purer version despite his weaker cultivation. The 6 directions divine treasure was also ruined, with remnants of Buddhist divine arts still attacking it. Li Tianxing questioned why Qin Mu insisted on saving someone who would become crippled even if healed. Qin Mu answered that he had to save the emperor for the sake of the heavenly saint cult. Moved by his resolve, Li Tianxing willingly removed the remaining Buddhist divine arts, saying he still wished to benefit the sacred cult despite no longer being its leader. At the 7 stars divine treasure, the sun and moon had been replaced by 2 divine swords constantly releasing sword qi. Li Tianxing explained the relationship between the 5 elements, 7 stars, 6 directions, celestial being, life and death, and divine bridge realms, revealing how the divine treasures formed the complete structure of cultivation. He bitterly lamented that the divine bridge ultimately led to a broken path to heaven, making countless years of cultivation seem meaningless. Qin Mu simply replied that there was nothing to regret if one had lived life to the fullest. Li Tianxing accepted his answer and jokingly declared his ambition to become the most beautiful woman in the world. As they continued through the celestial being and life and death divine treasures, Qin Mu finally understood the complete structure of the cultivation system. Upon reaching the divine bridge divine treasure, they found the bridge shattered with countless cracks, its fragments falling through every lower divine treasure. Seeing the hopeless condition, Li Tianxing suggested abandoning Emperor Yangfeng and taking over his body to become emperor himself, allowing the heavenly saint cult to rule eternal peace. Qin Mu rejected the idea, saying Li Tianxing was only suited to bringing disaster. Li Tianxing jokingly threatened to become the female emperor and make Qin Mu her imperial consort, causing Qin Mu to immediately seal his 5 senses to avoid being influenced by the demoness. They cleared away every remnant of the divine arts left behind by Dao Master and Rulai, allowing Qin Mu to devise a new treatment plan for Emperor Yangfeng. After careful calculation, he concluded that without those lingering divine arts, the emperor's souls and spirits could finally stabilize. Although the emperor's divine treasures were collapsing, Qin Mu believed that with enough spirit herbs he could use the phantom illusion technique together with the heavenly mustard seed technique to enter the divine treasures. If he refined medicine directly inside them, there was a chance to repair the damage. However, he had never treated injuries of this severity before and had no confidence in succeeding. While cracks in divine treasures could still be healed, Emperor Yangfeng's divine treasures had been completely destroyed. Apothecary had taught him extensive medical knowledge, yet none of it covered such injuries. Even so, Qin Mu knew of herbs capable of healing divine treasures, and the great educational heavenly devil scriptures also contained techniques for strengthening them. He believed that combining both methods might give the emperor a chance of recovery. After they exited the emperor's divine treasures, dawn arrived. Granny C awakened while Li Tianxing fell asleep. Qin Mu dispelled the heavenly devil creation technique and instructed Emperor Yangfeng that he would leave for 3 to 5 days to purchase medicinal herbs. During his absence, the emperor was forbidden to leave the room. Meals would be delivered to his door, and no matter what sounds he heard at night or who called for him to come outside, he was never to open the door or even look outside. When Emperor Yangfeng asked where he had been brought, Qin Mu gravely explained that this was where Granny C and Li Tianxing lived. The emperor only needed to remember one thing: anyone calling him at night would certainly be Li Tianxing. Looking outside would not only cost him his life but also bring ruin to the entire Eternal Peace Empire. Before leaving, Qin Mu transformed into the human-headed, snake-bodied Saturn sovereign and drew a magical gate on the door with ink. He wrote the words, "Gate of Heaven Influence," in the language of Yudu and then wrote another sentence explaining that only those who could read the words were permitted to enter, while everyone else must remain outside. He warned Granny C never to touch the door and to use a bamboo pole to pass meals through the entrance without crossing it herself. Although she could recognize the danger, she wisely agreed to stay away from it. Qin Mu then departed on the dragon Qilin, secretly hoping that if Li Tianxing could not understand the Yudu language and tried to force his way through, his soul would be dragged into Yudu and claimed by Earth Count, freeing Granny C from his threat. During Qin Mu's absence, Emperor Yangfeng faithfully obeyed every instruction. Each meal was delivered by Granny C using a bamboo pole, and the emperor only opened the door slightly to retrieve the basket before returning it afterward. Having ruled the empire for years, he found such confinement unbearable. At night, however, he began hearing the enchanting voice of a woman outside the door. The voice was so beautiful that it captivated his mind, making even the countless beauties of his imperial harem seem ordinary. The mysterious woman declared that since cult master Qin was absent, she intended to play with the emperor and perhaps skin him to make clothing before taking the throne herself. Although frightened by her words, Emperor Yangfeng found the voice irresistible and almost opened the door to see her. He quickly remembered Qin Mu's warning and realized this was Li Tianxing using devilish voice techniques to lure him outside. Even after blocking his ears, the alluring voice echoed endlessly in his mind. Frustrated, he noticed he could not read the Yudu words on the magical door despite cultivating Saturn Sovereign's Earth Marquis True technique himself. Outside, the disguised Li Tianxing repeatedly tried to decipher the inscription while practicing the Earth Marquis True technique, but he failed time and again. Emperor Yangfeng survived the first night, though he barely slept. The same events repeated on the second night. with the enchanting voice constantly tempting him to take just one look. By the third night, Li Tianxing grew impatient, complaining that he should simply break through the door and kill the emperor. However, he hesitated after recalling the strange third eye and eerie green light that had appeared when Qin Mu cast the spell. Suspecting the door connected to another world and fearing Qin Mu had laid a deadly trap, he abandoned the attempt. Emperor Yangfeng admired Li Tianxing's caution but remained puzzled why the old cult master insisted on speaking with such an alluring female voice. Even so, he nearly gave in and prepared to peek through a window before Qin Mu finally returned, arriving with the roar of the dragon Qilin and ending the temptation. Qin Mu immediately mocked Li Tianxing for failing to pass through the door, asking whether he truly could not understand the Yudu language. He then explained that the inscription simply meant, Gate of Heaven Influence, and even taught Li Tianxing the phrase. Nevertheless, Li Tianxing refused to enter, reasoning that merely understanding the words did not guarantee the gate was safe. As a fellow crafty cult master, he was unwilling to fall into Qin Mu's obvious trap. Qin Mu erased the inscription and entered the room to continue treating Emperor Yangfeng. He explained that widespread disasters had made medicinal herbs scarce, so he had managed to purchase only a limited supply. While preparing the medicines, he also informed the emperor of the shocking news spreading throughout the empire. According to official announcements, Emperor Yangfeng had died from overwork while governing the nation. The crown prince was preparing the imperial funeral, and the entire empire was mourning. Although shaken, Emperor Yangfeng bitterly praised his good son, with obvious sarcasm before asking about the fate of General of Heavenly Strategies and the other officials. Qin Mu explained that the Heavenly Saint cult had focused solely on rescuing the emperor, leaving the remaining officials to be captured by Dao Master and Rulai, who later handed them over to the crown prince. Since those officials represented the powerful noble families that controlled much of the capital, the crown prince needed their support and would not kill them. Qin Mu further explained that the crown prince's enthronement would likely occur on the 6th day of the 3rd month. Backed by both Dao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery, anyone opposing him would face extermination along with their entire family. When Emperor Yangfeng asked about the imperial preceptor, Qin Mu replied that he was still away on his honeymoon and could not be found. During his travels, Qin Mu had also encountered numerous search parties sent by the crown prince, who had ordered his men to recover the emperor's body whether he was alive or dead. Qin Mu then entered the emperor's spirit embryo divine treasure using the phantom illusion technique and attempted to repair it with various refined spirit medicines. Unfortunately, every attempt produced only minimal results, leaving him deeply troubled. Finally, he admitted that while he could heal the emperor's body and soul, repairing completely destroyed divine treasures was beyond his ability. He suggested seeking help from his grandfather, the famous apothecary. In the Great Ruins, hope briefly returned to Emperor Yangfeng until Qin Mu honestly revealed that his grandfather was the infamous Jade Face Poison King. The emperor's face darkened instantly, because Jade Face Poison King had once maintained an improper relationship with the Empress Dowager. Emperor Yangfeng had previously tried to have him assassinated, forcing him into hiding in the Great Ruins. He flatly refused to seek treatment from the man. Instead, he declared that he would return to the capital, where the dragon veins gathered. There, by using the Ling family's 9 dragons monarch technique and the chi of the 9 dragons, he hoped to reconstruct his divine treasures. More importantly, he intended to stop the crown prince from destroying the reforms he and the imperial preceptor had spent 2 centuries building. Qin Mu accepted the decision but insisted on disguising the emperor first. He stripped him of his imperial robes and crown, shaved his head completely, burned incense scars onto his scalp, shaved off his beard, dressed him in the robes of a Buddhist monk, and painted a massive scar across his face, transforming the once majestic emperor into a fierce-looking middle-aged monk who appeared equally capable of chanting scriptures or committing murder. Qin Mu originally placed his heavy pig-slaughtering knives on the emperor's back, but since the crippled emperor could no longer bear their weight, he carved lightweight wooden replicas instead. Satisfied with the disguise, Qin Mu announced they were finally ready to depart. Emperor Yangfeng, still furious at being humiliated, tried to execute Qin Mu with the wooden knives but lacked the strength even to lift a real blade when Qin Mu handed him one. Exhausted and defeated, he reluctantly abandoned the idea of revenge. promising to settle the score later before agreeing that it was finally time to leave. Qin Mu bid farewell to Granny Si and traveled on foot with Emperor Yangfeng while the dragon Qilin followed behind. Along the way, he taught the emperor the spirit creation technique from the great educational heavenly devil scriptures together with the overlord body 3 elixir technique, explaining that cultivating both while walking would strengthen his body and gradually heal his injuries. Although skeptical at first, Emperor Yangfeng quickly felt his strength returning and his complexion improving. Qin Mu planned to later teach him the ghost creation technique to stabilize his soul before treating it with medicine. Qin Mu also secretly considered recruiting the emperor into the heavenly saint cult and even making him one of its heavenly kings. As the emperor cultivated, his body recovered and he regained some vital qi. Though his destroyed divine treasures still limited his cultivation, Qin Mu also cultivated, drawing star power through the overlord body 3 elixir technique. Emperor Yangfeng was surprised to discover Qin Mu was still only at the peak of the 5 elements realm despite possessing strength comparable to the 6 directions realm. After 4 days of travel, Qin Mu treated the emperor's blistered feet with medicinal herbs, completely healing them overnight. As they continued, they discovered sects reclaiming territory under the Crown Prince's restored ancestral system. Prey Mountain sect disciples drove villagers from their land, killed anyone who resisted, and demanded offerings. Similar scenes unfolded across many prefectures as sects seized land, enslaved commoners, and worsened the famine caused by the snow disaster. Emperor Yangfeng was enraged and became even more determined to restore his cultivation. At Harmony Prefecture, Qin Mu met Duanmu Jane, the local magistrate and clean clothes hall master of the heavenly saint cult. Duanmu Jing reported that Dao sect and Great Thunderclap Monastery had supported the crown prince, who would ascend the throne as peaceful emperor on the 6th day of the 3rd month. His forces were hunting anyone resembling the missing emperor. Influential families had submitted to Buddhist and Taoist factions. Sects had regained their former lands. And the crown prince had even ceded 16 prefectures to Wolf Store country while negotiating further territorial concessions with Barbarian D Empire. Qin Mu dismissed the crown prince as a foolish ruler and asked about Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. After learning his location, he left immediately with Emperor Yangfeng and the dragon Qilin. After 2 days of flying, they arrived at a hidden mountain village containing a lake of divine blood. There they found the pregnant wife of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and the Imperial Preceptor himself living in seclusion. Emperor Yangfeng was devastated to see his trusted minister gravely wounded. Imperial Preceptor explained that after leaving Little Jade Capital, he had tracked down the god responsible for the natural disaster and fought him. Although he injured the god, he himself suffered even more severe wounds and remained hidden because returning to the capital would mean certain death. Qin Mu examined his injuries and concluded that the divine will remaining inside them could not be completely removed except perhaps by Grandpa Apothecary of Great Ruins. When ordinary medicine failed, Qin Mu used Mute's sword pellet to direct the power of the divine blood lake against the lingering divine art, finally stopping the bleeding though he could not eliminate the injuries entirely. He offered 2 choices: travel to Great Ruins for treatment or head directly to the capital. Emperor Yangfeng and Imperial Preceptor immediately chose the capital. Qin Mu then disguised Imperial Preceptor by shaving his head, burning fake monk scars onto his scalp, dressing him in Buddhist robes, and painting a green birthmark across his face. Since Imperial Preceptor's pregnant wife could not shave her head, Qin Mu instead disguised her as a Taoist nun. After completing their disguises, he jokingly invited Emperor Yangfeng, Imperial Preceptor, and his wife to officially join the Heavenly Saint cult, promising they would always be well fed and cared for. The Emperor and the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were both astonished by Qin Mu's boldness when he repeatedly invited them to join the Heavenly Saint cult. Qin Mu argued that if they failed to recover and reclaim the throne, they could at least rely on the cult's crafts to survive, even offering them high-ranking positions such as Heavenly King or Elder. The Imperial Preceptor jokingly requested the position of cult master. Emperor Yangfeng said he wanted the same role, and the Imperial Preceptor offered to serve as his assistant. Qin Mu took the proposal seriously, leaving both men speechless because accepting would effectively place the empire under the Heavenly Saint cult. To ease the awkward situation, the Imperial Preceptor's wife volunteered to join instead, and Qin Mu appointed her as the embroidery hall's incense master. Privately, The imperial preceptor insisted he could still reclaim the capital because most officials remained loyal to him and the emperor. His wife argued that the Great Thunderclap Monastery and Tao sect had already placed those supporters under surveillance or imprisoned them, making the Heavenly Saint cult their only hope. She explained they needed Qin Mu's trust if they wished to borrow the cult's strength. After careful consideration, the imperial preceptor accepted the vacant position of fourth heavenly king but insisted Emperor Yangfeng must never officially join the cult. The emperor apologized for forcing him to make such a sacrifice. But Qin Mu explained that the Heavenly Saint cult was not an evil sect and that its ideals closely matched the emperor's reforms. The group continued toward the capital. Emperor Yangfeng and the imperial preceptor practiced the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique to restore their vital qi. But their slow progress delayed the journey. Upon reaching Venerate Prefecture, Qin Mu treated Emperor Yangfeng's damaged soul. But he could not remove the divine arts left inside the imperial preceptor's body because the latter lacked the power to refine them himself. Qin Mu realized that the empire's two greatest experts were now unable to fight and depended entirely on his protection. While traveling, Qin Mu constantly cultivated, drawing starlight with the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique while repeatedly practicing the two sword techniques taught by the village chief. The imperial preceptor recognized the sword picture techniques and noticed Qin Mu had merged his own three sword forms into them, increasing their power but also creating flaws. Qin Mu demonstrated the sword of the founding emperor, Sea of Blood, whose sword intent embodied grief, sacrifice, and remembrance for a fallen homeland. The imperial preceptor sparred with Qin Mu using tree branches, quickly exposing weaknesses in sword-treading mountains and rivers. Qin Mu realized that the village chief's passionate sword philosophy and the imperial preceptor's calm, methodical style complemented each other, giving him two completely different paths of enlightenment. His swordsmanship improved rapidly, but despite nearing a breakthrough into a higher realm, he remained blocked by an invisible barrier. The imperial preceptor told him that only personal enlightenment could overcome it. Emperor Yangfeng explained that Qin Mu was on the verge of becoming a minor Grand Master, a realm the emperor himself had only reached at age 57 after comprehending the Earth's dragon veins. When Qin Mu asked about the 9 dragons monarch technique, Emperor Yangfeng explained that its essence was endless transformation, allowing dragons to change size, form, and attributes while combining spellcasting, sword arts, and corporeal divine arts. Expecting Qin Mu to refuse, he instead found him eager to learn and decided to teach him the complete technique. The imperial preceptor revealed he had already studied its manual many times and praised the emperor's broad-mindedness. After the emperor explained the cultivation method and demonstrated the 9 heavens divine dragon shroud with his weakened vital qi, Qin Mu immediately merged the technique with the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. 9 dragons instantly appeared, shattering rocks before transforming into fire, water, and lightning dragons. Emperor Yangfeng and the imperial preceptor were stunned that Qin Mu had mastered the technique almost instantly, surpassing nearly every royal disciple. The emperor then taught him all of his remaining insights and regretted that Qin Mu had not been born into the Ling family. With only 3 days remaining before the crown prince's enthronement ceremony, a giant bird transformed into a green-clothed woman who reported that all preparations had been completed. After sending her ahead, Qin Mu calmly declared that since the Great Thunderclap Monastery and Tao sect had been able to kill one emperor, the Heavenly Saint cult could do the same. When the imperial preceptor asked about his plan, Qin Mu answered that they would enter the capital and kill the emperor. As they drew closer to the capital, the number of scouts along the roads steadily increased. Although natural disasters still ravaged the lands outside, the regions near the capital remained festive, with songs, dances, trees decorated with red silk, and envoys from numerous nations arriving to witness the enthronement of the new emperor. Ling Yusha had already gained widespread praise before officially ascending the throne because he promoted diplomacy instead of conquest. Unlike Eternal Peace imperial preceptor, whose aggressive military campaigns had once expanded the empire to its greatest strength before his injury slowed its advance, Ling Yusha returned conquered territories, abolished the requirement for foreign nations to pay tribute, offered reparations, and restored peaceful relations. He also invited representatives from every sect to attend the ceremony and planned to publicly confess the empire's past sins. asking heaven to punish him instead of the people. Qin Mu immediately recognized how devastating this strategy truly was. He explained that Emperor Yangfeng and the imperial preceptor had spent 2 centuries enduring hatred, bloodshed, and sacrifice to reform the empire and advance cultivation. Yet Ling Yusha's public confession would erase all of those achievements and portray the previous reign as nothing but sinful tyranny. Emperor Yangfeng felt as though his son had stabbed him in the heart. The imperial preceptor proposed secretly contacting loyal ministers, old troops, and the hidden dragon guards before using heavenly devil cult members to infiltrate the capital. Qin Mu refused, pointing out that the monks and Taoists sent throughout the city were spread too thin to reinforce each other. Using a fried pancake as an example, he explained that anything spread too broadly would collapse with a single strike. While eating breakfast in Marquee Town, Qin Mu calmly revealed that he feared no spies because the entire marketplace was filled with members of Heavenly Devil cult. At his greeting, merchants, butchers, hawkers, and customers all simultaneously addressed him as cult master before returning to work. Emperor Yangfeng was deeply shaken by the cult's discipline and influence, while the imperial preceptor remarked that such unity resembled the foundation of an empire. Qin Mu even invited the emperor to join the cult, though the emperor angrily declined. When they reached the heavily guarded capital, Qin Mu simply led everyone through the city gates. The soldiers ignored them completely, causing the emperor to worry that even the guards belonged to Heavenly Devil cult. Qin Mu then distributed disguise-removing pills to Emperor Yangfeng and the imperial preceptor before leading them toward the imperial city and the Temple of Heaven. Inside the throne room, Ling Yusha officially ascended the dragon throne, accompanied by a monk and a Taoist, while countless officials, sect leaders, and foreign envoys paid tribute. After the lengthy enthronement ceremony, the enormous procession moved toward the Temple of Heaven. Almost half of the imperial officials were now monks and Taoists appointed by the new emperor, while loyal officials of the previous reign had either been forced into retirement, imprisoned, or confined inside their residences under constant surveillance. At the Temple of Heaven, Ling Yusha climbed the 999 stone steps alone. Before he could pray to heaven, a monk arrived bearing a decree from Buddha Rulai of Great Thunderclap Monastery. Ling Yusha knelt respectfully while the decree condemned Emperor Yangfeng as a tyrant and praised the new emperor. Buddhist miracles filled the sky with heavenly flowers and divine apparitions. Soon afterward, a Taoist delivered Tao Master's decree, which likewise encouraged Ling Yusha to abandon reforms and rule conservatively. Just as Ling Yusha prepared to confess before heaven, Qin Mu's voice echoed across the Temple of Heaven, announcing that the sacred teacher of Heavenly Devil cult had personally come to deliver his own decree. Qin Mu calmly walked toward the temple accompanied by Emperor Yangfeng, the imperial preceptor, and the imperial preceptor's wife, sarcastically asking why Ling Yusha had knelt for absent religious leaders but refused to kneel before him in person. Several sect masters and guards immediately attempted to kill Qin Mu, but enormous banners suddenly appeared throughout the battlefield. Heavenly Devil cult hall masters, elders, heavenly kings, supervisors, and other elite experts emerged from within the banners, instantly beheading every attacker before vanishing again. Corpses without heads quickly lined Qin Mu's path as he calmly continued forward. Even the crown prince's concubine died the moment she attempted to attack. Hundreds of Heavenly Devil cult elites then fully revealed themselves, battling more than 300 monks and Taoists in a catastrophic conflict that shook the Temple of Heaven and nearly destroyed the surrounding palaces. Meanwhile, chaos spread throughout the capital. Influential noble families rose in rebellion, trapping and slaughtering the monks and Taoists stationed inside their estates. Loyal officials imprisoned by Ling Yusha were freed, while Duke Wei descended upon the Temple of Heaven fully armed. General Qin Jian and numerous former officials also rushed from prison to support Emperor Yangfeng, preventing Ling Yusha's remaining supporters from interfering with Qin Mu's advance. At the summit of the Temple of Heaven, Ling Yusha desperately ordered his subordinates to stop Qin Mu, but the 8 great supervisors instantly killed his final protectors. Ling Yusha then commanded the officials to suppress the rebellion, but at that moment Emperor Yangfeng and the imperial preceptor consumed Qin Mu's pills, restoring their true appearances. Upon recognizing the legitimate emperor and his imperial preceptor, the civil and military officials immediately knelt before them. Driven into madness, Ling Yusha charged toward Emperor Yangfeng while proclaiming himself the Son of Heaven. The 8 great supervisors struck him down, forcing him back into his dragon form as he attempted to flee. They captured him instantly and forced him to kneel before everyone. Emperor Yangfeng then ordered the officials and imperial guards to exterminate every rebellious monk and Taoist, and they immediately obeyed. Finally reaching the top of the Temple of Heaven, Qin Mu leaned close to the captured Ling Yusha and quietly revealed that everything he had done was not for Emperor Yangfeng but to avenge Heavenly King Qian and Heavenly King Lu of Heavenly Devil Cult. Before Ling Yusha could respond, Qin Mu drew Junior Protector Sword and beheaded him with a single strike. As Ling Yusha's head flew into the air, Emperor Yangfeng and the Imperial Preceptor arrived at the summit, watching Qin Mu calmly shake the blood from his sword before returning it to its sheath. Emperor Yangfeng felt an overwhelming sense of fear toward the young cult master.